For more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm the repentant Drew Mindell. It is my fault for being delayed this morning. I was all set up, ready to go, and all of a sudden my microphone kicked out, and then the panic ensued. Yes, I am getting the thumbs down from Mr. Minuk. I will take that as a big fat L next to my name on this one instance. Nonetheless, I hope you all forgive me as we spend the next couple of hours with you talking about the Winnipeg Jets, the impressions of the team through the first 4 games, the attendance woes in the home barn, and of course, getting you set for this evening's contest in Edmonton against the Oilers. The Jets and the Oilers will do battle later tonight, 9 o'clock, which means post-game will start shortly before midnight. I must say, gentlemen, we all color coordinated quite well tonight. A lot of blue on the look for us today. Looking good, Mr. Ginsburg, playing under the weather today like the hero that you are.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Drew. I feel absolutely awful. I've got quite the cough, so I might have to go pick up some Buckley's after the show as I wait to do as you mentioned, the late Jets-Oilers post-game show. But yeah, love the fact that we all wore blue, supporting Kentucky, obviously supporting the state of Israel as well, supporting Brock Corden School, which our kids go to. That's what this hoodie is. It's a Brock Corden, not sure if you can see it here, but it's a Brock Corden Bears hoodie. And by the way, boys, before we get started, we have to wish a very happy 40th birthday to my best friend, someone who obviously means a lot to a lot of us, Dave's first cousin. Drew, your really good friend, Richie Pollock, turns 40 years old today. Unfortunately, I'm not going to go.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't turn 40 years old
Tuesday.
Today. He turns 40 on Tuesday.
Well, he it's his 40th birthday party tonight, so it's his birthday.
Fair enough.
I like where you were heading with that, and Dave and I were both just sitting there, just waiting on pins and needles for him to
his
say
actual
it.
birthday is Tuesday, but we're
hold on, Ezzy, we got a bigger controversy. Yes, hold on. Spency just said, but it's not his 40th birthday, and you just said your best friend.
Oh, that's true. That's gonna be awkward for the rest of the show.
One of my best friends, Spencer.
There we go.
One of my best friends.
There you go.
Yeah, love
way
you,
to cover your ass there.
It's going to be a nice party. I know Drew's going to drink. He's going to make up for what I would have drunk at your party. But yes, his actual birthday is Tuesday. But yeah, got to get that in there. Even though we're going to have a post-game show on Tuesday, the Jets play the Blues, I believe.
Yeah.
At
7:45 start.
At that normal 7:45 start.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll wish him another happy birthday on Tuesday, boys.
This is the well-oiled machine. This show is as per usual, there, Dave. It was off to a seamless beginning on this Saturday morning as we continue on our regular journey.
By the way,
talking
this is
about
lemon ginger water that I'm drinking. Naomi filled this Big Bubba up with lemon ginger water, so that's what I'm going to be drinking all during the show.
Ironically, that's also what she calls you, Big Bubba. So it works both ways there. Big Bubba's filling up Big Bubba as it happens on this Saturday morning. Dave,
these are great. I don't know if you have any Bubba products, but they're great.
I do not have any Bubba products, and now I'm really. Can we stop saying the word Bubba? I'm just getting uncomfortable as we continue to say it.
Okay,
the Jets into Edmonton tonight, Dave. Both teams off to disappointing starts. 1-3 Oilers, 1-3 Winnipeg Jets. Both teams scoring a lot, but both teams not giving up too many goals as well. It should be a very interesting contest in the Alberta capital later tonight, Mr. Minuk.
Yep, as Gordy said, he said the Jets don't want to become 1-4. I'm like, well, the Oilers are thinking the exact same thing. So you got two teams who are feeling a bit snarly. Of course, we haven't been watching the games, but I know that Oilers head coach Jay Woodcroft was less than pleased, dropping some F-bombs after their loss in Philadelphia, I believe, where they lost to the Flyers 4-1. So folks at Edmonton are feeling a little surly when, the collective pundits were picking the Oilers to be Stanley Cup champions, and they start the way they do. It's not the
Did
best
those pundits
thing.
know that they had Jack Campbell and Stuart Skinner in that? I like Campbell and Skinner, like they're good guys and everything like that. But like through the first 4 games, guys, like I think there's a lot of parallels, right, boys? Like both of these teams are scoring goals, right? Like that's not the issue. Like I believe the Oilers have 4 players above a point per game right now. You've got obviously McDavid and Draisaitl, Zach Hyman. I'm forgetting somebody there, but like they're getting the goals,
Yeah.
but the goaltending has not been good. Like Jack Campbell was good against Nashville.
Mhm.
That's
He had a big
the one
game.
win they came back in that victory.
Yeah,
You're right.
and he had, I think, 42, 43 saves. But they're having the same issues as the Jets are, right? Like they're turning the puck over and they're just not getting adequate goaltending.
It's actually 5 players with a point per game. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Evan Bouchard on the back end. Bouchard has 4 points in 4 games, all of them assists. But the Oilers, you're right, very similar. There are, I think, are parallels between the Winnipeg Jets and the Edmonton Oilers, certainly to start the year. I would say the Oilers had more Stanley Cup aspirations than the Jets do. I don't think I'm breaking any news with that. The Oilers fancy themselves as one of the upper echelon teams in the Western Conference with Draisaitl and McDavid, of course. I mean, I don't need to name the names. Everyone knows them. And both teams, if the Oilers are ornery, then the Jets are surly. So it should make a good battle tonight between ornery and surly. Surly only looks after the one person. Surly. Sorry, Surly.
Well, I mean, the only thing I would add, Drew, is that you have to think that Connor Hellebuck knows that he needs to be Connor Hellebuck. Yeah. And regardless of whether he generally starts slowly, this is an instance where the Jets need him to be the Vezina goaltender that he is and can be. And look, the fact is, and you're talking about early impressions of the Jets, it's not like the Jets have been terrible through 4 games. And as some folks pointed out, the best year in the history of the Jets 2.0, 17-18, I believe the Jets also started 1-3. So it's not, the world doesn't end when you're 1-3 to start the season. Now you don't want to be 1-4.
So the Jets are going to the West Final. Okay,
that's basically what I'm saying. We're gonna play back the October 21st version of this show. Don't you worry, Ezzy. I'll make a note of it, and if they do, we'll come back and we'll look like Nostra Davis. But if we don't, then I'll never mention it ever again.
Wasn't there a big game against? I know this is crazy that I remember this considering how many brain cells I've killed. But wasn't there a big game against Edmonton back then too that turned the season around? Like if you go back to the 2017-18 season, I seem to remember. I might be completely wrong about this.
It was Thanksgiving Monday. It was if we're talking about the same game, Ezzy.
Yeah.
It was
Wheeler scored a really nice goal. I remember.
It was Canadian Thanksgiving Monday. Byfuglien was scratched because he was injured. Mm-hmm. And the Jets went into Edmonton. If you remember, they had started that year by giving up leads in the first few games where they scored.
Yeah, that was game 3. That was the game they won 5-2.
Right, and they were up.
So they did play Edmonton the 3rd game of the year.
Yeah.
They got.
That I remember that.
No.
Yeah, they got beat badly by Toronto. Then they lost to Calgary in Calgary. Then they went to Edmonton and won 5-2.
Yes. Then they were up 2-0, and then they blew the lead. And then, if I recall correctly, Paul Maurice used his timeout because Edmonton scored 2 goals real quick to tie it up. And then the Jets sort of settled down, and then they won that game. And sort of the pressure, the boiling cauldron of water was relieved a little bit on that game. I remember I did post game for that game on the old departed radio station. So I remember it being Thanksgiving Monday, and no, there was no turkey to be served. Let me tell you, there was just me and Slick Rick in a darkened studio late at night on a Monday. Good memory all around.
You were just getting candy out of that old vending machine at the.
That vending machine candy was a relic.
Well, and for the record, now that I've actually researched it, it is the Jets did not start 1-3 that season. They started 0-2, and then they won the next 3.
There you go.
That person got it wrong.
Close enough. Good enough that we remembered that one game at the very least. Let's talk, and we'll get more into the nuts and bolts of the Jets and the Oilers later on as we go through the show this morning. But let's sort of talk about the first impressions of the Jets. We know the record isn't where they want it to be. 1-3. We know that they're giving up way too many goals. They've given up at least 4 goals in every game this season. I don't think you need to be a hockey expert to know that that's not sustainable for long-term success. But at the same time, right now, small sample sizes, unquestionably, the Jets are 4th in the NHL in possession at 5-on-5. Mm-hmm. And if you believe that 5-on-5 possession usually translates correlates well with team success, well, that's certainly a good sign. But so just sort of an overarching question for you both to bat around to start. Your initial impressions of these Winnipeg Jets through the first 4 games.
I think you summed it up really nicely there, Drew. Like the Jets have played pretty well in their first 4 games. Like Dave and I were talking about this yesterday when we got together for a little bit. We were having a little communique, and the Jets outshot 10-0.
Somebody else wasn't invited.
No, but it was
I know.
no, you didn't
Go
miss
ahead.
anything, Drew. But the Jets were out shooting the Golden Knights 10-0 in the third period, right? So like the Jets came out flying in the third, and look at, I mean, the Jets haven't got good goaltending. I don't think we can sugarcoat that. I'm not saying that Connor Hellebuck and Lauren Brossoit are the reason why the Jets are 1-3, but I mean, just look at this. Like, what is Hellebuck's save percentage? 845. And I think he's got something like, it's like a bad goal save above expected, right? And again, Connor Hellebuck is one of the best goalies in the NHL, if not the best goalie. So I'm not, coming down on him. It's only 3 starts for him. I think he will be better, and it'll start tonight against the Oilers in Edmonton. But one of the things that has bothered me, and I'm sure you guys talked about it on the last 2 post-game shows, like, I don't like the turnovers, and I just don't like the way the Jets are managing the puck. And again, I'm not going to single out any one player, but it's the defense that has really let this team down, and that comes from a team defense standpoint.
Well,
So I think
let me stop you right there, Ezzy.
Sure.
Let me stop you right there for a second and ask you this. So we knew that at the start of this season, the defense was going to be the question mark for the team. We thought that the forward lines with the increased depth and the ability, obviously the Velarde injury is a factor, and we'll talk about that. But we thought that the forward lines would be fine. How does the defense improve? Like, where does this improvement on the back end come from? Because it doesn't seem like there's going to be an airlift of resources onto the Jets back end. The defense is what the defense is. It's largely the same as it was last year. So, why will the defense turn things around? That's the question I have. And I don't know that there's any, specific, if there's any easy answers coming from the same defensive group that struggled last season.
Well, and all due respect to Logan Stanley, I don't think he is the answer. I think Nate Schmidt should go back in.
Well, I think
Declan Chisholm deserves a shot. I mean, like, he has earned his stripes, right? Like, Dave, like, he's played really well in the American Hockey League, and that's a possibility. So, I mean, I would assume Stanley's going to come out and one of Schmidt or Chisholm would go in. I would, if I was a betting man, I'd probably say Schmidt goes back in. We'll see what happens. I mean, we're going to find out later today, presumably, right? But it's got to be internal improvements, Drew, to answer your question, right? Like, I mean, like Josh Morrissey, Dylan DeMello, Brendan Dillon, Dylan Sandberg, everybody's got to be better. Neil Pionk, everybody's got to be better. And, like, when you look at how well the Jets are playing at 5-on-5, and we'll get into the forward lines, because I also don't think Mason Appleton should be up on that top line. Like, I think it should be Alex Iafallo or Nino Niederreiter, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's Iafallo or Niederreiter. Like, Iafallo is a left winger, so you have to figure out what you want to do there. Maybe it's Niederreiter, but Iafallo scored 2 goals, including 1 in the power play. So I think he's earned that, and that was one of the reasons why he was included in the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, is because he can play on the third line, the second line, the first line, right? So we'll get into that, but I think look, at the Jets don't have the Vegas Golden Knights defense, or they don't have the depth that the Carolina Hurricanes have. They just don't. But if you're scoring 3 or 4 goals a game on most nights, I mean, you should be having a pretty good chance to win, right? So like, it's a big issue right now, and the Jets have to figure it out, because with the exception of calling up a Kyle Capobianco who scored for the Moose last night, or making a trade. I mean, it's the same top 6 Jets defenseman that they had last year, right? So like, it's got to come from internal improvements.
Dave, I mean, what are you seeing? I mean, you've been watching them as closely as we have, of course, and you've been watching the Moose as you always do. And I'm sure we'll touch on the Moose and their defeat last night at the hands of the Iowa Wild later on in the show. But from the perspective, we've been doing these post games. It's been very similar, a lot of these games where the Jets, and I mean, Scotty Billick wrote about it, I think, in the Sun either yesterday or 2 days ago. Self-inflicted wounds. I mean, Rick Bowness himself is saying that some of the plays in their own zone are not hard enough. Not that the players themselves have been soft, but that the plays that have led to turnovers have been soft plays. So is that fixable, or is that just a function of the defense being the same as last year? Means why would we expect the Leopard to change their spots?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's definitely a good point by you, Drew. I don't think that the defense, you know what the defense is on this team, and you knew that you were expecting improved goaltending with Laurent Brossoit over David Rittich, who isn't even in the NHL anymore. Was sent to the Ontario Hockey League.
They really demoted him.
Well, he was sent to Ontario, but not the Ontario Hockey League, to Ontario Reign, of course, the Kings.
He's really stoning those 17 and 18-year-olds, though.
He's showing them who's boss, has he? But the fact is that
he's dominating the dojo, if you want the Seinfeld reference.
Yeah, just like Kramer.
Yeah.
So, look, I mean, it's funny because, the world is ending. And then we tried to remind folks, Drew, on that post-game show on Thursday, Vegas is a pretty damn good team. Vegas is 5-0, and the Jets could have beaten Vegas. And so, their goal differential, I think it was +10 coming into the game. So it's not like you were going up against the worst team in the NHL and you played a poor game. You played a pretty good game. You could have won. And again, miscues cost you that hockey game. But it was well within reach of winning that game. And that's one of the things. And look, you can't.
Logan Thompson made a highlight reel save. I mean, highlight reel save.
A number of them.
I mean, the paddle save.
Perfetti one. Yeah.
Iafallo, it was a blocker, I think, on Iafallo, right? Like that was
Kyle Connor. He made it. Kyle Connor, he made an unbelievable save on. So again, look, you're not going to be resting on moral victories. Drew, just quick, let me just get this in. You're not going to rest on moral victories 20 games into the season, maybe not even 10 games into the season. But right now, with the way the Jets are playing overall as a team, if you can tighten up the things that you need to tighten up, and I agree with Ez, and we'll talk about the lines and adjusting those a little bit, but I think that this team really is just a few mistakes here and there from really, if you're looking at them as a whole, as a collective through 4 games, they've played really 2 bad periods against LA, and they've made miscues through games, which again have ended up in the back of their net because the tenders haven't been who we usually expect them to be. So to me, it's a function of this Jets team has actually played all right. You're not panicking at the disco right now. You're thinking that if they can keep this up and fix those little mistakes here and there. And look, I mean, there's no bigger wake-up call.
So sloppy as opposed to systemic is what you're saying with
that's what I would say.
Errors.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, look, I was going to say there's no bigger wake-up call for a veteran player like Nate Schmidt to hear from your head coach publicly that, there's mistakes in your game and that you need to clean them up. So, I mean, that's the wake-up call that Nate Schmidt was healthy scratched once last year. I don't know. I'm curious. I don't know what his history of being healthy scratched in other organizations, whether it's Vancouver or Vegas or Washington. But ultimately, when a veteran player gets that healthy scratch, that you hope as a coach that's the wake-up call they need. And hopefully they change some of these D pairings a little bit because, Brendan Dillon and Neil Pionk don't work. And they really need to go back to the Duluth connection of they're going to keep this core together. If they're not going to inject Chisholm into the lineup, then what you do is, in my mind, you would go Dillon with Schmidt and Sandberg with Pionk.
And I think, boys, sorry, Drew, and we'll go back to you in a second here because it's not going to be long. But one of the main reasons why I think you go Nate Schmidt in Edmonton is because at 1-3, is this really the game you want to put Declan Chisholm in? Right, like you're 1-3
against McDavid and Draisaitl.
Exactly. So that's kind of what. And again, I'm a big fan of Declan Chisholm's game. I think he is going to play in the NHL, and it's probably going to happen this year. Right, like he made the team, so he currently is the 8th defenseman. So I'm not saying that I don't think Declan Chisholm is a good player. I do think he's going to play for the Jets this year. I'm just saying I think when you have 2 1-3 teams and you're going up against the big bad Oilers with Draisaitl, McDavid, and Nugent Hopkins and others. I just don't think, game 5 of the season is when you want to put Chisholm in here.
Well, and I could see Logan, you talk about Logan Stanley. I mean, his foot speed, I think, is a liability against the Oilers. I mean, I know that, Rick Bowness elected to put him in the lineup, on Thursday night because of his size. I mean, he doesn't play a physical game. And just because he's tall, I mean, I think that there's a misnomer that he plays a physical game. He doesn't. I mean, that's just not his play, much like it wasn't Tyler Myers' play either. He's more about angles and position and things of that nature. Whether or not he does it successfully is a separate issue entirely. But, against, if Draisaitl and McDavid are on the ice against Logan Stanley, that's a mismatch, ahead of tonight's game, simply because they can burn him. Now, McDavid and Draisaitl can burn almost any defenseman in the league, but you definitely don't want, it's going to be a skating game when you play the Edmonton Oilers. It's not a physical game like it is against the Golden Knights when they're big and they're aggressive and they use their, man mountain size against you.
Well, and then to that point then, Drew, I mean, the best skater on the defensive core,
Declan Chisholm,
alongside Josh Morrissey, is probably Declan Chisholm. So, I mean, if you're talking about a guy who has speed, has the ability to stick with guys. And again, I think his defensive play has improved. I mean, we tend to think when we think of Declan Chisholm as an offensive player, but I think defensively we've seen improvement in that element of his game. It's one of the things he said he worked on over the summer. So to me, you say, is this the game you want him in? Well, one of the things that we saw from this Jets decor, and it was uncharacteristic, and I talked about it on Thursday, the passing wasn't good. The passing was not crisp, to say the least, and it was killing a lot of plays in the neutral zone. You couldn't, you couldn't go up the ice with any speed because you were searching for passes that were behind you, that weren't on your tape, that weren't where you were going to be. It was where you had been. So to me, that was part of the problem. And again, that's one of the skills that Declan possesses, is his ability to feed the puck up quickly. Now, I know he had some hiccups in preseason, and I'm sure there was a lot of stress on a player like him who's, knows that he's in that bubble. But I think now that he knows that he's got a window of 2 months here to make an impression, I think that removes a lot of the insecurity perhaps that, that player might be feeling in training camp when that you have that sort of pressure. And I suspect, again, like I said, this may be the game that you want to throw him in and throw him to the wolves a little bit and say, here's your shot to, I mean, you're not necessarily I know you don't get last change, so you don't necessarily get to choose the pairs you want, but you could maybe insulate him a little bit. And again, like I said, for us, if this is going to be a skating game, you want one of your best skaters back there, I think, in the game.
Yeah, it's it goes to show that the Jets defense is very much still in a state of flux, which I don't think is a surprise at this point. Everyone was expecting something to happen on the defense during the offseason. Of course, nothing did. Okay, fine. And then Ville Heinola, who likely would have won himself a job, injures himself right at the end.
Well, he would have been the defenseman that went in, right? Like against Vegas.
He would have, I think he would have been in the lineup over Nate Schmidt from the get-go.
It's possible.
I mean, that I think that's sort of where the tea leaves were reading on that case, is that he was going to be the Jets' sixth defenseman, and Nate Schmidt was likely going to be in the press box. Now, who knows how long that would have lasted? But situation being as it is, we know that Ville Heinola's injury was very untimely, and as a result, the Jets are back to the original six that they had last season, and they weren't good enough last year. Now, the team in front of them, the forward group, wasn't as good, wasn't that great, defensively either. That's better this year. We know that. They've shored that up. But the defense is still trying to find their sea legs under them. And the question is, can they, or is this going to be an ongoing problem for the vast majority of the season? And that's
why I think you're forced to make a move, right? And I'm not sure what that move is. Like, I know a lot of people in the chat are going on Team Manuke's side here, and Declan Chisholm could easily be that defenseman that goes in tonight. Like, I wouldn't be at all surprised. I just said that I would kind of lean towards the veteran in Nate Schmidt, but Dave makes a lot of good points. Like, why not throw Declan in against the big bad Oilers, right? Like, he as Dave said, right? Like, most likely Declan Chisholm would be the odd man out once Ville Heinola comes back, right? Like, you think that the Jets would keep a more veteran defenseman. So all I'm saying is, and again, guys, I don't think, look at Declan Chisholm versus Nate Schmidt is not going to determine whether or not the Jets win this game. Like, let's be clear here. The Jets team defense has to be better. Connor Hellebuyck has to be better, and I think he will be better. Historically, throughout his career, he has rebounded after, a poor start or a couple of poor starts, right, boys? Like, we've seen, the worst of Connor Hellebuyck, but that's usually followed by the best of Connor Hellebuyck, right? Well, but I also think they need to figure out, those lines, because I think Rick Bowness, again, I mean, who cares what I have to say, but I think he might have overthought this a little bit. Like, first off, I like Cole Perfetti up the middle. Dave and I have talked about this so many times. I think he needs to stay up the middle, and I like either Niederreiter or IFL. Personally, I mean, I think what you do is you probably move Appleton back down, and you keep Perfetti, IFL. I guess what would the line be? It would be Perfetti,
Ehlers, and
Niederreiter. Sorry, Nemesnikov. Yeah, there you go. So
you're just swapping. I think all you're doing, Ezzy, if I can interrupt you there, is I think you're just swapping Appleton and Niederreiter. It never, to me, from the get-go, it never made any sense.
Yeah. Why Appleton goes back down to the third line, and then Gustafsson stays on the fourth line, and there you go.
Yeah. Look, Niederreiter's sorry, Dave, but Niederreiter's got the history of being a point producer in this league. Appleton's never had that history.
No, I mean, look, all due respect to what Mark Scheifele and Cal Connor want and having a right shot, I'd rather have a left shot who can score more goals than a right shot who doesn't necessarily score those goals. And look, Mason Appleton is what Mason Appleton is. He's a staple on the third line alongside Adam Lowry, and he provides you that PK ability. And to me, that's where he's best served. And maybe, if he was, I'm not going to blame the Vegas goal, the Eichel goal on Appleton, but the fact is that, he's best served in that third line role alongside Adam Lowry, occasionally contributing offense, not having a ton of expectation on him. I understand what the thought process was. He'd be a digger for the line and get the puck and go to the dirty areas in the corners.
That's what Niederreiter does too.
I understand that. And again, Niederreiter goes right to the front of the net. And so when we were watching the game, we talked about this on Thursday, I said I would absolutely have Nino Niederreiter in that position alongside Scheifele and Connor, and I'd have Appleton on the third, and you really don't have to make waves with your line. I think that, I think it just becomes a function of, and again, as we talked about, I'm all for putting
out
Appleton
on the second line instead of Nemesnikov.
Again, you have options. I think that would make
I don't think they want him. They want Nemesnikov at the center position right now. They also want.
So hang on,
but is that not a mistake? Is that not a mistake though? Like I think that's something we can talk about with Jeff Hamilton coming up here. Is Cole Perfetti not your second line center? Like I don't think Gabe Vilardi's injury should take Perfetti out of that middle spot.
I think what happens is that I think this is the thought process. I think Rick Bowness is an old school coach, and I think Rick Bowness sees that in his mind, the Captain Obvious. But I think that in his mind, he knows that he goes back to Nemesnikov and Ehlers having chemistry. He goes to Nemesnikov being that veteran that he can trust, and he knows that his team is 1-3, and he doesn't want to keep risking. Well, I guess they were 1-2 when he made the change, but I don't think he wants to risk testing out Perfetti at that 2C option. And again, I would probably have a little more leash for Cole Perfetti, but I just think that, from the team's perspective, that's just the way they're doing it. They're playing it safe, and they see that Nemesnikov is more veteran and get him,
the offensive upside of Perfetti, Dave, is so much higher than Nemesnikov. That's
well, it's not like he's off the line. I mean, he just has less options to, to play, right? But anyways, ultimately, I think, look,
more effective at center. That's my point.
Yeah, and
I agree with Ezzy.
No, I'm not actually not disagreeing. I'm just
and you anointed him the second line center at the beginning of training camp. We talked about how unusual that was when we were at Jets Fan Fest, right? Like, so I agree. The thing that stood out, what you said, Dave, is the leash. Like, there needs to be a little bit more leash for Cole Perfetti at second line center.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't think he was poor at second line center. Maybe the results in goals and assists, weren't necessarily there as you would want them to be. But I do not think for a second that the second line center position was a real area of concern for the Jets as they've been struggling here to start the season. When we come back, Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press is going to join us. The Jets and the Bombers have a conflict on Saturday, November 11th. We'll mention that with Jeff. The Bombers now going to host the West Final. That's going to be conflicting with the Jets' afternoon game against the Dallas Stars. We'll see how that gets resolved. I think that's the third straight year there's been a conflict with a Jets home game and the Bombers hosting the West Final. Jeff, up next, more Jets talk to come. Don't go anywhere. Saturday morning, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Bottom of hour number one. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and we're thrilled to welcome to the program the multifaceted, the multi-talented, our good friend Jeff Hamilton. Now, Dave and Ezzy, try not to be too jealous, but Jeff and I had an opportunity to run into each other yesterday, and boy, let me tell you, did we have a good conversation that you guys missed out on. Can't tell you what it was all about, but Jeff and I have a new bond with one another that's very special.
Solved pretty much life's problems. Hey, man, how you guys doing? Great to be on. Great to see your smiling faces. Great to talk about Jets and holding on a little bit because winter's coming. And today, I'll take any day like this for the rest.
Exactly. How about a meaningless Bomber game? Did you see that one coming tonight, Jeff?
I did not. I had to rate, so it's hilarious. It's not funny at all, actually, but the Winnipeg Free Press presses malfunctioned last night. So a majority of people, if not most people, didn't get their paper this morning. So I got mine. I'd like to apologize on behalf of the Winnipeg Free Press to everyone out there who didn't get their paper. But it's kind of funny because I wrote the story kind of being like, there's still a potential the Bombers could clinch the West Division. But there's a slim chance that they might if Calgary can win, but I still wrote it like they would. So like those people didn't get those papers, didn't have to read that, usual garbage from me. So it's it's a little bit misleading. But I did not picture that, guys. But I think that sets a new tone for the playoffs because BC Lions can't stop the run. It can't stop the run, and I don't know. I know this is a hockey show, but the CFL, which has been pretty exciting all season, is just I think it's going to be a little bit more. It's going to be a little more exciting here down the final stretch.
Well, we were talking before the break. I think this is the third straight year, Jeff, that there's now going to be a conflict between a Jets game and the Bombers hosting the West Final. The Jets are supposed to host the Dallas Stars at 3:00 on Saturday, November 11th, and of course, the Bombers and whomever, either the Lions or I guess the Stamps, or theoretically it could still be the Rough Riders, are going to be playing at 5:30. So I'd expect the Jets game is likely to move again for I think the third straight year to try and accommodate people who want to attend both. It's amazing what the Bombers have been up to, and of course the numbers are reflective of that when you look strictly at the attendance between both teams. And it's just the Bombers are the hottest ticket in town, and the Jets tickets, unfortunately for those in True North right now, are struggling to make the same level of impact.
It's actually kind of funny. I looked at the times, and you're right. The Jets will probably change the time, but for TV watchers, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's literally perfect. Like a hockey game on average is 2.5 hours. So if you're at home, assuming it doesn't go to extra time or there isn't some crazy stuff at the beginning that pushes it on, you could just literally change the channel right over because the game doesn't start till 7 minutes after the hour, right? So the football game. So it kind of adds up. But you're right. But I was about to say I made the mistake of tweeting out yesterday that the relationship is better with the Bombers, and I got a chance to talk to the Bombers about their relationship with fans, and woo-wee, some people really didn't like that one. Maybe it was a bit of a troll job. It wasn't really my full plan there, but some people came to the defense of the Jets. So guys, alas, there are people out there who are supporting them through and through. So I think the city's going to get through this. I think the Jets are going to eventually rebound. People made a lot of great points about, and of course I made that point in the story. We'll see if half the people probably didn't read it, but is that winning does matter. Obviously winning does matter. And so, I think there's other things that play with the Jets' low attendance numbers right now, but you got to imagine if this team can figure things out. We've seen a lot of good hockey this year, despite some of the results, but if they can figure this out, I think those attendance numbers will climb along with the victories.
Well, and I also think, Jeff, I think you'd agree here. Like, I remember Drew and I had season tickets a long time ago, and the team wasn't very good.
Bad decisions on my part.
Yeah, Drew put an end to that after a couple of years, but it was a good 2-year run that we had, Drew.
Yeah.
But I mean, you would agree, Jeff, that the season ticket base was solid even when the team wasn't very good, right? Like, I don't know what the season ticket numbers have been on a yearly basis since the team moved to the new stadium. But the fact is, the Bombers have been supported very well, even when the team was not doing very well. Obviously now, with the Grey Cups and everything like that, I mean, it makes sense that the team is selling out the IG field, right? But I think that whole narrative that the Jets can't. Let me try to frame this question, because obviously I'm trying to get around to the attendance thing. I mean, the attendance has been crappy at the first 3 Jets home games. I mean, there's no denying it. When you only get 11,500 people to see the defending Stanley Cup champions with all of those Manitoba connections, Mark Stone, Keegan Kolazar, Zach Whitecloud wasn't in the game, but Brett Howden scored a goal from Oakbank, right? Like, that's a huge issue. And I want to preface this by saying I think it's absolutely ridiculous that people are already talking about relocation. Like,
totally.
The Jets are owned by Mark Chipman, who's very wealthy, and David Thompson, who he's not just wealthy, he's the man, right? Like, he's a
there's wealthy, then there's wealthiest.
Exactly. Like, he's the wealthiest. So I don't think, I mean, this talk of the Jets, might relocate in 3 to 5 years, to me is absolute nonsense. I want to ask you about the attendance specifically through the first 3 home games and how concerned you are, and what do you think, True North's next steps should be to address this? Because obviously the season ticket base is what it is, right? It's, apparently Darren Drager reported it's under 10,000, which was surprising to me. I thought it was more around 12,000, but obviously not if you only had 11,500 at the game. But what are your kind of main takeaways from what we've seen so far with the low attendance?
Yeah, I mean, I think concerning is a good word, in the sense that I think there's certainly concern in that building. True North is definitely concerned that there's 11,000, just fewer than 12,000 fans coming to games, as you mentioned, as against a team that bounced you from the playoffs, a Stanley Cup champion, a Thursday night. Those aren't, that's not a Tuesday night, that's not a Monday night, that's a Thursday night, and again with all those Winnipeggers. So yeah, there's certainly concern. I mean, the concern's going to continue. We expecting that against St. Louis, this team is going to garner way more fans? Probably not. They're probably going to be in and around the same thing. And I think the reality is that the next step here for the Winnipeg Jets, and I mean, I don't pretend to know all the answers, and I don't envy their situation, but I also don't have a ton of sympathy for their situation either. I think they made their bed here. I think they got an absolute have had an incredibly strong commitment from the city for the first 10 years. And, you look at some of the things that have happened, some of the things that haven't happened. You look at some of the anecdotal evidence from season ticket, holders and feeling that they're not getting their value for their tickets, or they're not being heard or listened to from their ticket representatives. It just, I think for a very long time, guys, the reality is the Jets had the attitude towards media, towards fans, towards, all the big stakeholders that, whether they said it quietly or not so quietly, depending on who you were, is that, you need us more than we need you. And now they're moving into the reality of that's not the case. In fact, you really do need us and you need us bad. And so, to me, it looks like, maybe there's a little bit of a looking in the mirror going on here. I don't have a lot of hope for that. But you think that that's probably going to have to happen. I think they're going to have to, they have apparently a season ticket advisory committee, right, of people who have come in and given their feedback. I don't know if that is just hear them out and ignore them, or what. Maybe that committee needs a few more voices on there. But you hear a lot of the same thing, right? You hear apathy. You hear too expensive. You hear not feeling like you're getting everything out of it. And I think another thing, guys, is the reality is because it's expensive to buy tickets, because season tickets are crazy, and because they're not sold out anymore, you can go to any game anytime you want. So, if you want to go to 10 games a season, you can go to whatever 10 games you want to on the schedule now. You don't have to buy 41 games at home to go to your 10 favorites and try to get, sell or get rid of the other ones, or whatever your plan was. You can go to any games you want. And so when you're not getting the vibe, if you're not getting the good feelings, like you feel like you're part of something bigger than just signing a check every year, then what's the incentive to stay a season ticket member? What are they doing to help these people who have dedicated thousands of dollars for a decade? And I mean, I'm not suggesting the Jets aren't working hard. Of course they have to work hard. This is, they're running a business. They understand, to a certain point, I imagine, what they need to get done. I just don't think it's a quick fix. I don't think it's one of those things where, you sign Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck. Well, would that have been different if you signed them in July, like when you kind of were going through the ticket sales? Because I don't think people were picking up the phone and suggest, and picking up the phone and going, like wanting people to come in. I just didn't feel all that welcoming, like, wanting to buy season tickets just because of those signs. They wanted to see what they were looking at. And the unfortunate part is we've seen some really good and exciting hockey from the Jets, but people look at 1-3 and, maybe they don't trust the team. I don't know. But to me, I think it's that. I think it's pretty interesting that Mark Chipman, who leads the business community in this province easily in this city. Would we not agree? I mean,
yeah, I would agree with that.
Kind of runs the city. For him to have a plea out to corporate dollars, because I really think that's the difference here. Like that's the solution of the money and the tickets and stuff, is getting those corporate dollars. So for Mark Chipman to go out and have a campaign and to plea for these, for the corporate world to step up, and then to see what we're seeing now with, 4,000 fewer fans. I mean, I guess you'd have to look at the stats, maybe more people, because we all saw the percentages, right, of people who buy the season tickets and how low that corporate was, about 15%. Maybe we have seen an uptick in corporate, but we've just seen a drastic downfall of people, of just ordinary people buying tickets. I don't know. And I mean, I get the question a lot. It's like, what are your solutions? What are your solutions? it's not my problem to figure it out for the Winnipeg Jets. I'm not the one rolling in millions of dollars from it. Like, it's like what? Like, I'm supposed to be the guy to figure it out? Like, give me a break. It's none of our jobs. It's the Winnipeg Jets' job. So I think I would start by suggesting, making people feel more part of it, adding, different things that make you feel like a season ticket holder. We've seen other markets, whether it's Sidney Crosby delivering tickets. We've seen just different people do things to make people feel part of it. I also think a big fix to this is getting the Jets out in the community. I don't think the Jets, the Jets can say how much they care about the fans and how great it is to play against them. I don't think that connection to the community is there. I don't think that they do it, they're seen enough, they're doing enough. And, I get that they're busy, they're hockey players, their job isn't to be, outreach workers here. But at the same time, I mean, it's up to the players to sell the product. It's up to the players to sell their community. It's not having to ask the fans to do. It's like, and I see certain things, like I remember as a kid, like, did they even have like the Jets Wives fundraiser anymore, where you go
Jets
get
Wives
Carnival, where you go get autographs? Like, that made me a lifelong fan, man. I still have pictures of me sitting on Teemu Selanne's lap when he had his Achilles done. You know what I mean? Like, you remember those moments.
It was really awkward, Jeff, because that was last year.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Crazy, But yeah, I just, again, like, it's not, we all want to see the Jets do well in this city. We all want to see the fans enjoy a good team. But it's up to the Winnipeg Jets organization to make it a better experience for people who are putting out thousands of dollars. And what those answers are, go look around the NHL, man. You can make a game day experience feel like entertainment outside of the hockey. I don't care who you are. That's not like, I don't care if you're a mad hockey market like Winnipeg. You need to create an atmosphere that's fun to go to, that isn't just about the game. That
like the Bombers, right? Like, you see people tailgating hours and hours before.
Well, you can't stand and watch the game at the Jets. So, like, I mean, you can, but you'll have someone behind you asking you to sit down. But, like, the Bombers have a little bit of an unequal playing ground in that they have an open concourse. They literally have like a social hall in front of the Red Hot to kind of bring the atmosphere. But the Jets need to find other unique ways to make their venue enjoyable, whether that's like more enjoyable kind of like little segments they do on the Jumbotron, man. I've gone to so many games outside of Winnipeg, and I've been in stitches laughing at some of these. And you can go out and steal them. This isn't plagiarism. You can take good ideas from other markets and copy and paste them. And you just haven't seen that over the 10 years. And now the Jets are playing catch up. And unfortunately, it's not a quick fix, and it's going to take some time. Although I will end it on a positive note. I do think they figured it out. I do think, this whole idea of relocation and the Jets leaving is just so premature. It's ridiculous. Let's just see, this team get better, continue to play, hopefully get the results, and then see those ticket numbers climb while they're being earned.
Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press is our guest Saturday morning. You're watching the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. The Jets and the Oilers will do battle later on this evening. The Jets and the Elks will do battle later on this afternoon as well in Winnipeg at IG.
Maybe a barn burner tonight.
It's going to be a busy day between.
Wouldn't it be the Bombers and the Elks, Drew?
What did I say?
You said the Jets and the Elks.
Oh, yes, it would be the Bombers and the Elks. I don't think the Jets are playing the Elks.
What do you call one of those crossover episodes? Where
the Bombers are going to play the Oilers.
That's right.
I mean, we know, Jeff, that the Jets like to, show some support to the Bombers and go down and throw footballs and do all that stuff. But I don't think they're going to start taking up the game to that degree. Speaking of the Jets, speaking of what they're doing on the ice, and let's focus on that for a sec. We were talking before you jumped on with us about the lines and what the Jets have been doing. So from your perspective, when you're watching this team through the first 4 games, what are your overall impressions of what this team has been so far this season?
You know what? I think, despite the results, it's been kind of mostly positive. I think you can make the argument that out of 12 periods, maybe 2 or 3 were bad. Unfortunately, those 2 or 3 were bad enough to result in 3 losses. So, I think it's interesting to me too, because when Gabe Vilardi went down, it was, a lot of people were like, oh my goodness, this guy was playing great through the preseason. But, I started counting in my mind, like, of injuries on a team, Gabe Vilardi is probably like the 5th or 6th guy, like that there's about 4 or 5 guys that you would, you don't want to prefer anyone get injured, but like, sure, he's down on that list. So my point in even bringing that up is, and you see it in the Vegas game, you see it in You've seen it against LA. When adversity hits this team, there's inevitable panic. It just seems like they're not as composed, and that's the negative part I've seen, is that that when things aren't going well for you, that's when you kind of, I don't want to say pack up, but that's when things don't go your way. And we saw it with Vegas, how just composed they were. There was no panic, there was no whatever. They just continued to play their game. And so that's one of the things. But I think it's been mostly positive, besides the goaltending. The goaltending hasn't been good. You know what I mean? And we've been saying this for years. The Jets need above average goaltending. You could argue that the Jets need really, really good goaltending to be a good team. And right now they're just not getting it. I'm not, there's some game against LA. There's a handful of goals there that, certainly Connor Hellebuyck will want back. Laurent Brossoit, I don't think he was horrible against Vegas, but he didn't give the Jets an opportunity to win that game. I felt like, that Jack Eichel, yeah, that's a beautiful shot, but better positioning as a goalie fixes that. I'm not saying Laurent Brossoit needs to be bigger. There's probably goalies that isn't going in on, but I just, the goaltending hasn't been there. And when you're trying to bring in, it's not a new structure, but there's a lot of new players. There's a lot of new personality with this team. And when you went through a preseason that had injuries, illness and stuff, and players that were, Nikolai Ehlers, who clearly looks like he's getting, trying to catch up to speed here. I'm not trying to create excuses for this team, but there are some things that played a factor leading into the regular season that I think have kind of bled out. And while we've seen some great hockey guys. I mean, I'm after the first game against Calgary. I mean, I've never seen a community celebrate a loss like I did in game 1 here. It was like, if I have to hear if this team plays like this 82 games, they're going to win more often than they don't. Well, yeah, I guess so. Unless they don't have that killer instinct at the end of a game and can't finish off games, that's a sign of a good team. So I think there's some really good things that we've seen out of the Jets. I think there's some still things we're trying to figure out with this team, identity. But I do think there's some early signs that suggest that this is a good club. They're a deeper club than we've seen over the last few years. It's just about figuring this thing out.
Jeff, if you're Cole Perfetti, so you've been anointed second line center at the start of training camp, you've played that role for all of preseason, and then on game 4 of the season, you're moved to the wing. How do you have much trust in your head coach and Rick Bowness when that sort of knee-jerk reaction seems to happen so quickly in the season?
Knee-jerk. So for me, I think you looked at, is it premature? Sure. But you look at you look at Perfetti and some of the stress that comes with playing center. I think this is a guy that, it's just, how do you put it? How would I put it? He's got the IQ to play at this level. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But he's continuing to grow into his body. And the reality is when you play heavier teams like Vegas and your center, and maybe Rick Bowness hasn't seen a lot of that, defensive zone play that he needs to see from Cole Perfetti. And maybe he, with the injury, it kind of gave him his first out to mix lines around. Right. And I thought it was interesting too, because you bring Mason Appleton up to the first line, and then you bring Nemestikov up from the fourth line to the second line. So you have all these moving pieces. So you have to kind of go out of your way to change that line. And I thought, but I do think that Rick Bowness is, while it might be viewed as like, okay, that's premature, maybe Cole Perfetti, what's going on in his head? Does he feel like he failed or didn't do a good enough job and he feels like he's demoted to the wing? I don't think that's it at all. I think the conversation is, we're going to take some pressure off you, let you find your touch. And I think it worked. He scored a goal there. Like, I think that is going to be a catalyst potentially for Cole Perfetti to find his confidence. I don't think it was necessarily lacking, but I think Rick Bowness saw through the first few games, while he's also not that great in the dot, guys. So, the reality is
that's not a surprise. I mean,
no,
I don't think anybody expected it.
But when possession, when you're Rick Bowness cares more about faceoffs than any coach that has been with the Jets. Like, he knows the importance of possession. He knows the importance of winning those draws. And so again, I think whenever he makes a move, putting a centerman onto a winger, it's not because it's a lack of trust necessarily. I do think it's a lessering some responsibilities and rising some of the expectations that come with that lesser expectations, right? You have to be a 200-foot player as a centerman in the NHL. And is Cole Perfetti a talented player with a high IQ? Absolutely. Is he a 200-foot player that can muck it up in the defensive zone corners with some of the big centermans out there? Probably not yet. And so maybe it's just going to be one of those things where he's constantly teasing him back. And I think as long as you have a dialogue with Cole Perfetti, then I don't think you're worrying about what he might be thinking, because that's what you hear from players, right? They just want honesty, right? They might not like the honesty, but they just want to know where they stand with the coach. And Rick Bowness, if he's got anything going for him, it's that honesty. And I imagine he's having those conversations that Cole Perfetti is not sweating the fact that 3 games into the season, he's been moved to the wing.
Yeah, and you make some good points. I still think Perfetti should be up the middle, Jeff, but obviously it's Bones that makes that call. And I do think that faceoffs factor in, and everything you said, coverage in the defensive zone. Also, as you were talking about faceoffs, I don't know if you saw Connor Bedard go up against Sidney Crosby, but I think he lost like 15 faceoffs in a row. So obviously, Crosby struggled early in his career. Bedard struggled. I mean, we know that as players get older, they get better at the faceoffs. But I think you're right. I think there's probably a better than 50% chance that Perfetti stays on the wing tonight against Edmonton. I wanted to ask you about Alex Iafallo, because to me, he's been, look at Iafallo's been in the NHL for a while now, 10 seasons or so, and 3 goals in 4 games, 2 goals last game, including 1 on the power play. Like, for me, Iafallo just seems like he has delivered. He has done everything that, when we, when Chevy or Rick Bowness or any of the other players talked about Alex Iafallo, like the Swiss Army knife, he can play on all these different lines. He can play on the power play, penalty kill, more so power play, obviously, with the Jets, right? But just what have your impressions been? Because I think he's probably earned a spot in the top 6. I don't know if it happens, but I definitely would like to see him a little bit higher in the lineup, because he has been just fantastic, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, as I think it kind of reminds me of when Nemestikov and Niederreiter came last year. It's like the new guys set the tone, right? Like they're the guys that, okay, here's the blueprint to how you want to play. It's like, all right, perfect. These guys have been here for 2 weeks. It's like, Iafallo has been, like I said, as advertised. When the Jets made the trade, obviously Gabriel Velarde was, the big piece, if you will, for that coming back from LA. But I got a few calls from scouts and advisors that I know from other teams, gave me a call and said it's not going to be very long before Iafallo becomes a fan favorite in Winnipeg, just the style in which he plays. And I think a lot of people were questioning, why is he up on the first power play unit? And well, I think he showed you why he's up on the first power play unit, because the Jets have been trying to execute that play for about 3 seasons, and the guy gets on it and he 1 times it pass. Like that chemistry is what they've been trying to brew with Mark Scheifele in the slot, right? And so with the player in the slot, mind you. So I think he's been awesome, man. And like he is that player where I wouldn't be surprised if they move him to the top line. But he's the kind of guy that I think is going to bring whatever you ask him to bring with whatever line you put him on. He's going to bring it, and he's going to make, he's one of those sneaky players that he's going to make people around him better, right? We usually expect that to be a centerman because for obvious reasons, but he's the kind of guy that I think he brings the tempo up. He has that sneaky scoring touch, as we've seen, and I think he's just the guy who finds himself in the right situation. And if he can pot a lot of the opportunities that he's been getting, this is going to be a really good team. And that's why you look at when the Jets have their full lineup, the potential they have on scoring, right? I like that second line as it's constituted right now. But if you have an Iafallo who doesn't have to play on your top line, but can bring that offense to a third line with an Adam Lowry, that's where I think you start talking about, teams that are competing for Stanley Cups when they have that kind of depth. So I certainly think he's the kind of guy that has come in, has lived up or exceeded expectations. And certainly, a guy who's been in a lot of instances, particularly last game, driving the bus for the offense.
And Jeff, let's not forget the fact that he's got the best goal song of the entire group. A little,
right.
Nothing but a good time by a Poison. Come on.
Second. Macarena is number 1.
Fair enough. Jeff, I was going to ask about the biggest acquisition in Winnipeg news, of course, with your acquisition of Ken Wiebe to be your new colleague here at the Free Press. But I guess I'll stick with the hockey stuff and talk about the defense. And you can add your thoughts about Kenny joining the Free Press, because that's I have to tell you, I still find it weird whenever I write Ken Wiebe of the Winnipeg Free Press. I'm like, just doesn't. I know he worked there back in the day, but it just doesn't feel right to say that. It still
Kenny
feels
the intern.
a little bit odd. Kenny the intern. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So But anyways, so you can always share your thoughts about Kenny joining the crew. But
Kenny's
you know
great.
what?
Love to have him on. Love having him on board. Kenny's
It proves the
his
team
passion
hockey.
is-
It proves the Free Press hockey team
Absolutely.
at the very
And
least.
golf.
Hey,
And
and get
golf.
this, guys! Breaking news: the Winnipeg Free Press is hiring people. It's
Yes.
there's a newsroom out there that is hiring people. So
Love it.
Yeah, absolutely perfect.
That's,
Well, if there's one thing
that
you
is
pay
a
your-
feather in the
I have
cap,
a
no
journalism
question.
diploma. Jeff, will you hire me?
Yeah, absolutely. Milk you after too. Good.
If there's one thing we've shown is that
I got
Winnipeg
that
Free-
reference, Jeff. That was
Yeah.
very good. That was a good
hope-
meet
I'd
the
hope
parents.
so. I'd hope
Yeah,
so.
that was
I got
good.
that one.
Anyways,
Shout out
yes,
to Bobby
kudos-
De Niro.
Shout out to the Free Press though, because you're right, Jeff. In this day and age, the Free Press is doing things that most papers aren't doing. They're increasing, not decreasing. So kudos to your publication. But talk about the defense, because that's one thing. It seems the more things change, the more they stay the same, and the defense has stayed the same for this organization really since Kevin Cheveldayoff made those summer trades to acquire Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt. And I remember back in the day, everybody's like, "Well, this is it. That's what they needed. They needed to solidify their defense." And now with the offense seemingly upgraded defensively, the question is the defense sufficient? And is it going to be capable? And we've seen now Nate Schmidt being healthy scratched, Logan Stanley getting his chance and, not looking great in the one game. Of course, it was just one game. So if you're, head coach Rick Bowness putting on your coaching hat, are you going back to Nate Schmidt, who maybe got the message you sent both to him personally and through the media in his conversation with us a couple days ago? Or do you want to inject someone like Declan Chisholm, who's probably one of the best skaters alongside Josh Morrissey?
I think I was about to say the Bombers. I think the Jets defense is their Achilles heel. I talked about the negatives of this season and kind of focused on the goaltending because the goaltending hasn't been where it needs to be, and that needs to be where it has been because of the defense, right? The defense isn't. And I think, of all the roster structuring, the defense is the weirdest one to me for this team, just because, it was the summer of Chevy a couple summers ago when they picked up, Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon. I think we can kind of come to the conclusion that there was a little more hype in those deals than what turned out. I think Brendan Dillon has brought, certainly a good guy in the dressing room and a certain toughness that I think the blue line needs. We saw, Nate Schmidt was kind of on the downfall when he came here, and it hasn't really improved from year to year. And to the point you just made, was a healthy scratch against his former Vegas Golden Knights. So it's an interesting one because even like, the Florida game, right, where the Jets win 6-4, they didn't have Montour and they didn't have Ekblad. And, you could argue that, Ekblad's a better defenseman than Josh Morrissey. At least he's not worse than Josh Morrissey. So that at best they're, equal. And I don't think that the Jets have a Montour. I think that, the drop down from their first defenseman in Josh Morrissey is too great. Who would you have as the Jets' second D-man?
I mean, it depends if you're talking about offensively. I would say DeMello.
In general, if you had to pick two
Sure.
guys from the Jets to keep, who would you keep?
Probably
That's a good question.
Probably
Josh
maybe
Morrissey and who?
Sandberg, maybe in terms of upside.
Amber? Okay.
Well, in terms of upside, in terms of consistency,
For sure.
I mean,
This isn't a dynasty league, Drew.
Well, I think
fair enough.
exactly.
Probably
I think it's I would say it's probably between Dylan DeMello, Brendan Dillon.
But that's what I mean. The fact that we're
yeah.
debating it with three guys, that's what I'm saying. Like that's the Achilles.
The Jets
heel
don't
here.
have a clear-cut number two defenseman.
They
That's
don't.
for sure.
They don't. And Josh Morrissey really only became a clear-cut number one defenseman last season? When you think about the points and what the expectations are of a true number one, right? So I think the defense is a problem. The defense and the ironic part of the defense problem is that most of the focus has been on it's got too many guys. So it's like if we can't even really name like the best second defenseman on the team, and they also have too many guys, that means there's a lot of guys in and around a certain level that need to get out the door and better players need to come in. The problem is we know the issues in Winnipeg and its difficulties in some cases attracting free agents and whatever. You're not getting the number one D-man from anyone else. Nobody just goes out and gets rid of them. And if someone's looking to get rid of the number one, I'd be doing my homework on why. Because this guy probably has a lot of ghosts in his closet. So so you kind of have to draft them or bring in guys like a Dillon and Schmidt and hopefully hope that they have their better days ahead of them. And so a couple gambles didn't work out. It's a long roundabout way of saying that I just think the defense as it's constructed is just not at that status it needs to be at. And I mean, you know, you look at Logan Stanley getting in over Declan Chisholm, you know, it's interesting. I think Chisholm had a better camp. So you would think that he would be the obvious choice, but I think this is where hockey politics comes into play. And don't shoot the messenger here, please. It's not, I don't, you know, despite my email inbox, I don't make the roster decisions on this team. I have no say. Rick Bowness doesn't call me and ask for my input. What I think went down there is that Logan Stanley, whether it's a confidence issue or a respect issue, because Logan Stanley is respected amongst his teammates, and you have to understand the ripple effect of making moves in some cases on teammates. So I think it was just a sign of respect to Logan Stanley to go to him. But I think after that game, he's not going back to him. I think Declan Chisholm needs to come in. I don't know if Nate Schmidt comes back. You know, Nate Schmidt didn't have the preseason because he was working through an injury. So I think he's, you know, they're probably, you don't want to keep him out too long, but you want to give a Declan Chisholm an answer. And maybe, you know, that's where I think the risk taking needs to happen with this team a little bit, is that there's been less risk taking on defense, trying to give guys a shot, and just, you know, because the ceiling on Chisholm feels a lot greater than a lot of players on that blue line, because we just don't know what he's capable of doing at this league. But there's a lot of guys on that blue line who we know exactly what their ceiling is and what you're getting. And we haven't even been getting that ceiling, you know, through the first.
Well, especially hammer with Ville Heinola out for the next couple of months, right?
Well, that's an unfortunate one too.
You don't have the option to put Heinola in. So as Dave mentioned during the first segment, the first half an hour, right? Like, isn't this the time that you want to get Declan Chisholm into some games? Like I said, if I was a betting man, I would say Nate Schmidt goes in. So obviously anybody who listens to the show knows that probably Declan Chisholm's going in.
Yeah.
But
Schmidt's on waivers.
Yeah, exactly. But like, you know, like, what are your other options? If you're not putting Declan Chisholm in and giving him his first taste of the NHL, like, are you calling Kyle Capobianco up? Like, I think Capobianco actually was pretty good in, you know, 15 games or whatever he played last year. But I think, like, to your point, I mean, like, what are we doing here? Like, are we just going to recycle, you know, Chisholm, Stanley, and Schmidt until Heinola comes back? Like, I don't think that's a very good plan.
It's not a good plan. Like, and I thought, you know, Chisholm has 2 games under his belt. At least one of those was pretty decent, if I recall correctly. Like, I think he handled it. And, you know, to me, it reminds me of like the CFL and their risk averseness to starting a new quarterback. That, you know, so you just kind of deal with what you got, and it's like, you're not really happy with it. It's not really garnering you the results, but you're worried.
Where are the Elks if they start Trey Ford at the beginning of the year?
There you go. See, cross episode here, guys. It's just, you know, it's amazing how the NHL and CFL
legal procedure right now.
Exactly. But it's just, that's the number one question, right? And it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult thing to address through trades, through free agency, particularly in Winnipeg. So you have to kind of draft them. And so if you're not giving opportunities to guys like the Johnny Kovacevics, like, you know, the Declan Chisholms, the guys that, you know, have been good soldiers for you and have played well with the Manitoba Moose, if you're not willing to give them a shot over aging veterans or people where you know exactly what you're going to get, and then what's the point? To your point, Ezzy, what's the point? Like, what are we doing here? Like, you know, it is extremely unfortunate that Ville Heinola, you know, suffered that injury because he was pushing the envelope. I think they had an easy out to sit Nate Schmidt for him. You know, let him figure out, you know, let him get back up to speed, see what Ville Heinola could do for the first whatever amount of games. If he continued to play the way he was playing, they're not putting Nate Schmidt back in. It's an easy excuse not to put him back in. We're rolling. Why would we change the line? Nate's been patient. He's been a good teammate. All those things, right? That all blew up with Ville Heinola getting injured, and now the reluctance to give some of those younger guys. Like, I imagine I'd love to get some of those younger guys in a little group table. Some of these guys who have been trying to crack the club on defense and played the Moose, and just find out what they're really thinking. Because you know, for a long time there, particularly at the end of Paul Maurice's era here, a lot of unhappy fourth line forwards. A lot of people who were moving back towards the Moose that were, you know, didn't want to be here anymore. It was crazy. And now we're kind of, you know, I wonder if we're getting that with the lower end defense, and at what cost, right? At playing these other players that, you know, showed you last season near the, you know, down the final stretch exactly who they are. You know, but I also think that's the risk of having the win now mentality. I think the win mentality can incorporate new bodies. In fact, I'd argue that the win now mentality has to incorporate new bodies. It's not the same old because you're not winning then. How are you expecting to win now? And you can trademark that.
Free Declanism.
Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press, always opinionated, always loquacious, always a great guest here
Always
on the
handsome.
program. He'll have coverage of the Bombers and the Elks a little bit later on this evening. Jeff, thanks for doing this morning. Always great to see you. We'll catch up again real soon, buddy.
Hey guys, thanks so much. I don't put hairspray in my hair for anybody but you guys on Saturday mornings. Okay, so appreciate it, and have a great day, great show. And like I said, let's end on a positive because I know a lot of people like to give me the gears as Mr. Negative. Let's, I think the Jets can figure it out here. Get those butts in the seats. Let's start talking about the good things and like this show. So thanks a lot for having me on, and we'll see you down the line.
Hammer,
Thanks,
we'll
Jeff.
see you at the West Final. Drew and I will be starting the beer snake.
Right on. I expect
Bye,
no
Jeff.
less.
Be well, buddy. Let's head to break. Jeff Hamilton having just joined us. John Mattis up at the bottom of the hour. More Jets talk to come as well. Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy. Everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to test if the game is better at home or at Boston Pizza. The results are irrefutable. Catch the game at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at ZappiaGroup.com.
Are you dreaming of your very own backyard rink this winter, but dreading the work involved? Well, stress no longer, because the Rink Guys are here to make it happen. The Rink Guys are Winnipeg's first outdoor skating rink installation and rink maintenance service. The Rink Guys offer free site evaluations and different rink construction options. Plus, they use a custom-sized liner to prevent any damage to your lawn. Lighting packages are also available to help illuminate your rink during those long, dark winter nights. To get your rink started today, visit therinkguys.com. 10:15, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Saturday morning. Reminder, late night tonight, the Illegal Curve post-game show, IC After Dark, shortly before midnight. So just as the clock turns from Saturday to Sunday, or the calendar turns from Saturday to Sunday, yours truly and Mr. Ginsburg will be here to bring you all the latest on the Winnipeg Jets Edmonton Oilers contest.
There's a good chance that I'm going to be heavily drugged for tonight's post-game show.
And
how is that different than any other time?
Thank you. Exactly. As we say in Hebrew, ma nishtana. How is tonight any different than any other night? Would be my answer to that.
Yeah, it's going to be different drugs tonight, though. It's going to be Buckley's and Tylenol, cold and flu. I mean, does any of that stuff even work? Like, I'm drinking this like lemon ginger water. Like, this probably does more than Tylenol or Benylin or any of that stuff, right?
I mean, sure. What answer do you want me to give here that's going to make you feel the best? So I mean, I'm willing to say whatever you want.
Well, Drew, you're not a doctor, but you'll take a look. So I want you to put on your doctor hat right now.
I will do that for the Halloween show coming up in about 9 days' time. I think it's a Monday against the Rangers. We can wear our Halloween costumes prior to on that night.
So Drew, you're going to go as slutty
radio host. It's going to be me wearing my headphones and nothing else. It's going to be really disturbing for everybody involved. Hey,
you guys remember
Ginsburg started this.
You remember the year that I went as Gary Lawless?
I do remember the year you went as Gary Lawless. It was one of your better
100
costumes.
pounds, but that didn't work, so I just wore my
Hey, the lawman. You know, Ezzy, the lawman listens to the show.
I'm joking, lawman. I love you if he's listening.
Yeah, you're in trouble now. You're never getting invited to the Lawless compound for that. I can assure you. Well, you probably weren't getting invited anyway. So let's be honest. Let's get back to talking about the forward line.
More of a Lactabani guy, anyways.
Yeah, we were talking about the forward line during the first segment, and mentioning that the Mason Appleton experiment as the top line right winger isn't something that really any of us thought as particularly appealing. And I understand the perspective that, they want a right shot there. And we know that the Jets are lacking when it comes to, right shot players, forwards, particularly in that kind of role with Velarde out of the lineup. The options that they have to be a right shot player are few and far between. It's really Appleton and it's Kupari. Those are the only right shot forwards that the Jets have in their roster. To me, though, that shouldn't be the differentiating, the determining factor who plays with them. You look at the, analytics, you look at the possession numbers, Connor, Scheifele, Appleton, 40% possession in the just under 14 minutes that they played together against Vegas on Thursday night. It just is. I just don't see Appleton being a good fit there. It's not playing to his strengths as a player. I'm sort of.
I wouldn't be surprised if Bones leaves him on that top line. I'm not saying that it's necessarily going to happen, because I'm with you, Drew. Like, again, we were going back to the first half an hour of the show. If you were listening, we were saying basically, Nino Niederreiter would probably be our number one choice, and then Alex Iafallo second. But again, they're both left shots. Vladislav Nemesnikov is also a left shot, but he's obviously centering that second line with Perfetti and Ehlers.
Well,
so they got to figure this out, guys. Because, and sorry, Drew, I just wanted to say, like, Velarde's not out for 2 days. Like, Velarde's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks here. So, like, again, I'm not saying that putting Nino Niederreiter on the top line is going to, mean that the top line is going to score 5 goals tonight. But especially against an Oilers team that is going to be very desperate and very hungry. That was a terrible loss. Everybody heard Jay Woodcroft use the F-bomb. I posted it on Instagram. Like, everybody knows that, the Oilers are going to be, fired up tonight. Let's be honest. Like, both of these teams aren't happy with winning one of their first 4 games. Like, that's just the reality. It's a good point by Bells there. They should put Blake Wheeler on the top line, because he's obviously
he's not playing in New York very much.
Yeah, has he been healthy scratched yet? I don't think he has, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's coming. But yeah, I mean, look, Mason Appleton is a 3rd, 4th line guy at this point in his career. Like, he is, and he's a good 3rd or 4th line guy. I think, like, he's a good penalty killer. He scored a beautiful goal, obviously, the other night on that nice assist by Adam Lowry after Josh Morrissey gave him a stick. But I just don't think long-term or even short-term that Mason Appleton should be on that top line. And I've already given my answer. I would rather see either Niederreiter or Iafallo. So we'll see what happens. We're going to find out later today if there's any changes on defense. But I think, Dave, that's probably another thing that you're going to be watching to see if Appleton is on that top line or if Bowness decides to make a move. Not saying that line was horrible. last game against the Golden Knights. They weren't horrible, but I think you have to find until Gabe Vilardi comes back, you have to find who the right person to play on that top line is on the right side. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be Mason Appleton.
Well, let me ask you this, Dave. So the Jets only have, with Vilardi out of the lineup, the Jets have 3 forwards who are right shot. And if Scheifele and Connor want right shot players playing with them, and I mean, okay, fine, we can take them into account. Well, Scheifele is a right shot; he can't play with himself.
Right.
Hang on, that sounded poorly. But nonetheless, Scheifele isn't going to play.
Like
right
Dan Robertson saying to me, "Dave, I don't recognize you with pants on because I'm always wearing."
You've been pretty good at playing with yourself over the years.
Appleton is the other right shot, and then the other one is Rasmus Kupari. Could you foresee a scenario where the Jets, try and go with Kupari? He's, got the speed. He certainly, he's not known for having a scoring touch, and it obviously would facilitate other ripples through the lineup. But if they want to play with a right shot forward, can you foresee a scenario where they try and let Kupari see if he can audition for that role for the next few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got Gustafsson in the lineup right now. You called up Toninatos from the Moose, so you do have guys who can go in and play fourth line center if you want to give Kupari the shot. I just want to finish off one or add one thing, because as he touched on it, Mason Appleton's career high in goals is 12. The last 3 seasons, Nino Niederreiter has had 20 goal seasons, at least a 20 goal season.
He's a consistent
or
20 goal scorer.
So to me,
he's a shooter. Niederreiter is a shooter. He shoots the puck.
Right. And he also goes to the front of the net, and he's not afraid of mixing it up. So I just think that provides an advantage. And yeah, I mean, look, I think they like Kupari at the center line and at the center position. And I think they want to keep him, on the fourth line. And look, as we talked about on Thursday, Drew, if Mason Appleton gets busted down to the fourth, we got the recreated GST. What could be better? 15, 19, 22. You just need Gustafsson to be the center and have Kupari on the wings, like Tanner Glass, of course, back in the day. But I just think that, I mean, we didn't know what Kupari was. Anybody who claims that they knew what Rasmus Kupari was is not telling you the truth unless they watched.
Well, unless you were a big Kings fan.
Well, that's what I mean. Unless you're a Kings fan, but most people who watch this broadcast, generally speaking, are probably fans of the Winnipeg Jets. Hopefully, the fans of the Manitoba Moose, but they generally aren't, paying attention to the, first round picks of the LA Kings and what they've been able to do. So to me, Kupari was an unknown, and you can see from him. Hey, we got a Ruben bomb right now coming out in the screen, but
finally, an unarticulate Ginsburg is joining the program.
Well, you guys couldn't hear it because I was muted, but Ruben was banging violently on the door, so he actually came in and handed me a box of Kleenex. So that was very
thanks,
nice.
Ruben.
That's very nice, buddy.
My dad has a cold.
Yeah. Good job, buddy. Way to give 110% and help Daddy out.
You want to come on and say hi, Rube?
Hi.
Okay, we're going to continue doing the show, Rube. We'll be done in about 45 minutes. Okay. Go upstairs, okay?
Anyway, so no, I just think I think Kupari is definitely the kind of person who you could, if you're desperate to have that right shot and you want to give a guy who's got a little more, it's similar though, right? He's got speed. He's got an aggressiveness to his play. And again, that's what I was getting at, was that we didn't really know what he was. And I think that they want to get him to establish that culture, because for the longest time, the Jets haven't had a fourth line that had that culture of, creativity and could do more than hold their own, but maybe be able to do something. And I think now they feel like they can. So to me, the easiest solution is the one that's staring you in the face. It's not complicated. I don't care about the right shot, left shot. Put Nino Niederreiter on that first line. Put Mason Appleton back on the third line, or Alex Iafallo. I don't really care who you do. But I just think that you put Appleton on the third beside Lowry.
I don't care who I do.
Well, the show's guys. Bailey, the intern, is in the chat.
Hey,
Let's
Bailey's
keep this
got
above.
A boyfriend apparently.
Well, we'll talk to Bailey about the birds and the bees after, but we're not worrying about that right now. But the point is, let's keep this correct for our young fans here. But
did you guys buy Girl Guide cookies? Because I
bought 6 boxes from Bailey. Just so you know,
we talked about this on the post game show on Thursday, Ezzy. We do, we all did our part. Yeah.
Sorry, Bailey. Next time you sell them, I'll buy.
That's terrible. As
in fact, Bailey was so protective and ensuring that I got all 6 boxes that she wouldn't let the assistants in the office buy any from her because I wasn't there, so she had to deal with them. And they were like, "Oh, you're selling Girl Guide?" She's like, "No, these are all going to Dave." So I got some upset assistants in the office, but I made them happy because I let them have some Girl Guide cookies. So I was very generous with everyone. Anyways, back to the Rasmus
What are the best
Kupari.
ones, vanilla or chocolate?
No, the chocolate, obviously.
I'm a vanilla guy when it comes to cookies myself.
Really?
Yeah, if
You're a vanilla person in general, so I guess it makes sense.
I'm pretty dull. What can I say? I'm very basic. What can I,
No,
I
but
like
I'm
my
with you,
pumpkin-
Drew.
I like
think
my
vanilla are
pumpkin
better.
spice lattes, and I'm basic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bought
in
a
any
boxed
event,
pumpkin pie last night. I haven't eaten it yet, but I just had a craving for a boxed pumpkin pie, so I might have it tonight. That might be my little treat.
Your little treat is going to be an entire box.
Oh,
of
hold on!
pumpkin pie.
Breaking news! No. Bailey has
Ezzy.
2 more boxes. Ezzy.
Looks like you're on
Haley,
the
I might
hook.
be wrong, but I think I still might owe you. I don't know if I ever paid you for last year's. We might have a bit of a beef here, but I think I do owe you for last year's box. So, but I will take those last 2 boxes.
Way to steal
Send you an
money from a
e-transfer.
teenager, Ezzy.
Wow, Ezzy, she's trying to raise money, and you're just pilfering.
But this is fitting for Ezzy. I mean, I can see that when you were in high school and you'd go to Sev or something, Ezzy, and did you have money or did you rely on your friends to buy you the Slurpees for you?
No, he definitely just walked out without paying.
Yeah, exactly. What are you talking about, Drew? It was just dine and dash. I want to, as we're talking about cookies here, I'd like to give a shout out to Viva Puffs. My kids love those, and I love those too.
Okay, thank you.
There
for
we
that.
go. All right, Drew, get the show back on the rails. You're supposed to be the host.
I honestly, the show has gone off the rails more than if this is the 10:30 in the morning edition of the show, what's it going to be like at 12:30 in the morning tomorrow when we're doing post game show and as he's doped up on cold meds and everything? This show is going to be completely off the rails, even more so than usual. But our point is, I think that we all agree that none of us really like the idea of Mason Appleton playing with Connor and Scheifele just because he doesn't seem to bring the skill set that he brings. I'm not saying that he doesn't have a skill set because that would be rude, of course, and incorrect. But the skill set that he brings is not suited for that role. It would be my comment.
And I think you're also just my final thought on this, really. And I know we got to go to break because we've got John Mattis coming on from the Score. But I just want to say the other thing is, again, I think you're killing him. You're asking him to do too much. And I'm not saying these guys aren't well conditioned.
You just nailed it.
But
you're asking him to do too much. You're 100% right, Dave.
Yeah. And I just think, again, you want him fresh because you want has the Jets PK been unbelievable this season? Jets PK was good last year.
Oh, it's been terrible this year.
That's my whole point. And you need Mason Appleton. He's a big part of your penalty kill, along with Adam Lowry, along with David Gustafson potentially. So Rasmus Kupari as well. So what I'm saying is,
terrible. Didn't they kill off like 7 penalties against Florida, Drew?
They're 22nd
one of
league,
7.
70%. They're 22nd in the NHL.
Yeah. So anyways, so the fact of the matter is that you have you have a poor PK, and you need Mason Appleton to be fresh because you need your PK to be, not necessarily elite, but it's got to be up there. It's got to be top 10, and it's not, as Drew just pointed out. So that's another reason I think you keep Appleton on that third line with Lowry.
And you need the PK to be sharp tonight against the Edmonton Oilers team that we know how dangerous they are on the
power play. Is 33%, I believe.
31.3 now,
there
5th in the NHL, but you know what they were last year, and you know how dangerous they are on the power play. So if you're going to run into penalty trouble and you're going to be on the PK against the Edmonton Oilers, it's going to likely be a very
James,
long night.
Reverse that U in the E there. Ruben is R-E-U. It's funny. Everyone spells it R-U-E, but it's R-E-U. But I appreciate that anyways.
I think maybe I wonder if the sandwich is R-U-E. That could
sandwich is definitely R-E-U.
You're right. When it comes to sandwiches,
the other spelling of
the
Ruben is R-U-B-I-N.
Well, on that note, we're going to spell Mattis, M-A-T-I-S-Z, with John when we come back to talk about more from around the NHL and the Winnipeg Jets. Stay with us Saturday morning. The show's off the rails, and we're only 90 minutes in. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Bottom of the hour. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and our good friend from the Score, John Mattis, joins us on the program, national hockey writer for the Score. John was just complimenting the quality of the commercials that certainly makes this broadcast, add that certain je ne sais quoi to this broadcast. John, if you need any advice on producing quality commercials such as this, then just let us know and we'd be glad to help out.
Well, I messaged you guys in the chat all about that, and I'm dead serious. These are legitimately good commercials. I was fired up. I was about to purchase every single item and service you were pitching me. And high production value. It's top-notch stuff. I don't know who's behind the scenes doing all this, but give him
We have an entire team, John. We have, I think we're up to about 12 or 13 full-time staff in addition to us.
That's what I thought. I thought this was like this giant production, ESPN level.
Well-oiled machine here, the Illegal Curve Enterprise.
Yeah, exactly. Enterprise is right. Well-oiled machine indeed, John. And we obviously brought John talk a little bit about the Winnipeg Jets, talk a little about what's going on around the NHL as a whole. I want to start with a team that we saw here in Winnipeg on Thursday night. A well-oiled machine indeed, the Vegas Golden Knights, just picking up where they left off last year, undefeated so far this season, 5-0. They score a lot. They don't give up a lot. I mean, they're obviously the kings of the mountain until somebody knocks them off. But, right now it seems like they are not like, that they want to stay atop that throne. We've seen so many teams as of late, cup winners that have struggled to start the year and maybe find their sea legs as the year goes on. Why is Vegas different than some of the more recent Stanley Cup winners?
I'd say the biggest thing is Mark Stone being healthy mixed with only losing Riley Smith. Like they're returning essentially the same roster. That's pretty rare for a cup winner. And you look at their lineup and there's no big holes there as far as injuries. And they were so methodical in the playoffs, so dialed in, and it seems to have rolled into this season. And I think I was thinking about this the other day. Like, we're in an era where repeating is fairly common. Like, we had, or maybe not necessarily repeating, but winning multiple cups with the same core.
Right.
Whether it's LA, Chicago, Tampa, I might be missing someone else. If you look over the last 2 decades, and so it's I think we're in that pocket of time where once you have that core that has gone on long runs and then finally wins the thing and then comes back with a certain swagger, it's doable. Obviously, there are occasions when it doesn't happen. Otherwise, we'd see it back-to-backs all the time. But I think it's pretty notable that they've gotten off to this strong start, because you can understand the Stanley Cup hangover, right, guys? Like, you go through this long, arduous process of winning the cup. Everyone's beaten up. And then you take that huge sigh of relief and have these parties and celebrate and go on a parade. And then you got to get back to business. And it's got to be hard to ramp back up. I know these guys are professionals, but they're also human too, where it's like, I achieved the goal that I always wanted to achieve. I reached the top of the mountain, to use your word, Dave. And then they have to kind of get it all together for the start of the season. And so you understand why these teams get off to poor starts, but Vegas has bucked the trend. So props to them. And they're really deep, and they proved last year the whole goaltending thing, as far as paying a high price for an elite goalie, is not necessary if your system can insulate your goalie. And so far so good.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on everything you said there, John. It's like nobody even talks about Robin Lehner, right? Like he's just, It's just like, yeah, Robin Lehner is just not playing right now. And we want to ask you about the Jets, your thoughts on the Jets through the first 4 games. But I was texting with you earlier this week, and I have to ask you about the Drew Doughty article, because I already knew you were an excellent writer, but this is an amazing piece. For those who haven't read it, it's a long form piece. It's called The 15 Shades of Dewey. Whether or not you're a big Drew Doughty fan or not, I highly recommend you read it. We'll tweet it out. We'll send it out, the link, on the Illegal Curve social media channels. I don't even know if I mentioned this to you when we were texting. I've always been a big Drew Doughty fan. In fact, I got Doughty put on my Team Canada Olympic jersey. Since he came into the league, he's always been one of my favorite players, and that's probably why I appreciated this article even more. And there were a lot of things, like there's a lot there. And, talking about how he's led the Kings in ice time every season. And it's also crazy that Doughty's about to play in career game 1100. Like, that made me feel really old, that Doughty's already played 1100 or about to play 1100 games. And there were a lot of good things in there, like Doughty talking about, how everybody was writing him off 3 years ago, looking at his advanced stats. And then what does he do? Well, what did he have? 52 points last year. We just saw him here in Winnipeg, and he looks like, he's 33 years old. He looks like 25-year-old Drew Doughty, as far as I'm concerned. I still think he's a top 20 defenseman. One of the things I also loved that you talked to him about was he has 3 daughters. and being a girl dad, I really like that. Him just talking about how he likes, seeing his kids, and obviously one of his kids is named Naomi, which is my wife's name, so I got to get that in there as well. I guess, John, just a roundabout way of just asking you, like, how much of a pleasure was it to write this article and just go, as deep as you did into Drew Doughty, who's obviously, one of the greatest personalities in the game today?
Yeah, it was really fun, and a huge part of it was the personality mixed with the quality of player, right? How often do we see a star level talent, express himself the way that Drew Doughty does? I mean, this guy's not afraid to step in front of a mic and say what's on his mind. I think it's kind of interesting, like in analyzing sort of his sound bites. He certainly gives out cliches, and he falls back on certain phrases, but like he'll just drop an F-bomb when there's a scrum of 10 reporters and the camera's rolling. Like he just doesn't care. He's very unfiltered, and I think you can really appreciate that in today's day and age. And his career arc is quite interesting. I mean, he had 2 cups and 2 gold medals and a Norris by 25. Like he had done it all. So a part of you goes, okay, like, is this guy just going to fade into the background, or is he going to try to really push for more Norrises? Does he want to climb the mountain as far as points? Like, where's his career really going? And where it's at now is that him and Mikey Anderson are one of the best shutdown pairs in the league. And I asked Drew a few times. We sat down for about an hour in LA in September, and I asked him about, style of play adjustments over the years, and he goes, like the way that we won the cups, the way that I played during those years, I'm not straying from that. Like he's like, I can go out there and get 70 points. I can go try to get 100 points, but you give something away when you push it offensively, and you got to admire that, right? Because there's obviously ego involved there, and he has seen people write him off for various reasons, and a part of it is, you look at his point totals, and while, like you said, Ezra, he bounced back last year with 52, I think, in 78 games or something. Very good. He's not quite, at Makar level, right? So he's super interesting to me, super fascinating to me as far as a player who, he's only 33, so he's not exactly exiting the league right now, but he's certainly seasoned. 15 years in LA. He's seen a rebuild. He was upset early on in the rebuild, and now he's fully on board because they are now challenging for playoff series wins and whatnot. And fatherhood changed him. He's gone to therapy over a few things because he has mental health issues in terms of the way that people view him. It really affects him.
And I think you have to admire him for coming out and speaking openly about that, right?
Yeah, like it's one of those things too, right? Where you look at Drew Doughty and you're like, you kind of, for lack of a better term, you're like, this guy's a typical jock, right? Like he's always chirping on the ice. He's naturally gifted, athletically. He's got $100 million in the bank. Like, you think of all guys, he wouldn't care about like TSN not having him on the Olympic team in 2022 when they're doing projected rosters, but that like actually ate him up inside, which is, and again, like it's very human of him to react that way. So I appreciate the candor on his part. But it's also one of those things where you're like, who cares, Drew? Like, you're one of the best defensemen in the world. Just go out there and do your thing, right? So it's a very I guess Drew Doughty thing where he's kind of, he's marching to the beat of his own drummer in a lot of ways.
John, I'd love to talk to you about Jack Hughes or Connor Bedard, but we'll talk about attendance issues, but not locally, not just focused on Winnipeg, because you'd think that the only city that in the NHL that was experiencing problems with crowds was Winnipeg, based on some of the hyperbolic coverage the last few days. But I think if you look at what happened in San Jose, if you look at what happened in Buffalo, it's not just a Winnipeg thing. It's across the league where attendance issues are a problem. And so do you think this is a trend, or do you think this is simply just October hockey with lots of other things going on, and also a function of what the economy looks like in a lot of these markets?
Well, first of all, I definitely called Drew Dave before, so my bad on that.
I consider that the greatest compliment anyone has ever paid me.
Wow. Yeah, the double D there. Ezra's an easy one.
It's a DM. It's DM. That's the problem.
Well, and John, we're all wearing blue for some reason today, so that's understandable.
Although I do appreciate that Dave always has a fireplace going. It could be like the middle of summer, as has been in the case previously, and he's got that fireplace running. Attendance issues. I would say, it's complicated, right? Because I think it depends on each market. Like in San Jose, I mean, why would you go to a game at this point? Whether it's you're fully involved in what's going on locally with the San Francisco 49ers and that the type of NFL team that they have there, or you look at the trajectory of this team this season and you go, I'll pass. Or there's just other things to spend your money on. With Buffalo and Winnipeg, I would say both closer to concerning than San Jose. From what I gather, some fans are upset in Winnipeg about things such as customer service by the team. So you're like, okay, I get it. Like if you feel like you're not being appreciated, then that's your way of showing your disinterest or your displeasure. I wonder if in Winnipeg some people are responding to Kevin Cheveldayoff still being the GM. Obviously the extensions are nice on paper, but maybe there's people out there that go, I didn't want to bring back Scheifele and Hellebuyck. It's possible there are people out there. Buffalo, oh man, they have the longest playoff drought in the history of the NHL. So I think that one is probably a wait and see in terms of doling out your dollars after so many years of just horrendous teams. Mind you, they're a very exciting team. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot to be excited about and a lot to bring you into the rink, whether it's Tage Thompson, Rasmus Dahlin, and then the whole bunch there.
Aren't these issues? Sorry, John. Aren't these issues? For a lot of the markets. Maybe not the biggest markets, not the New Yorks, not the Torontos, maybe not the Montreals even. But there were times when the Habs had soft attendance going back, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I mean, it just seems it's a systemic issue in that there's too many games. At least this is my theory. Too many home games that are ultimately not significant, or that the value for the dollar isn't there, especially when you can watch that same game at home for pennies on the dollar while doing a lot of other things. I mean, it's hard to sell a Monday night against San Jose in February in any market. And I think it's just a function of the league, and the schedule are not necessarily built for long-term success at times.
Yeah, I'd say the home opener not doing well attendance-wise in Winnipeg is curious, is a more of an eyebrow raiser than the second and third game of the season, because you just think that's an automatic sellout, right?
Should be.
Whether it's corporate dollars being pumped into filling the building or just people being fired up, and that's the one game they go to all year.
And also, John, sorry to interrupt you, 11,500 against the defending Stanley Cup champions. Right?
Yeah, and even LA, obviously, they're bringing back Dubois. Like, you think that the three games that they've had so far, even Florida, obviously not like a prestige team, but they are the cup. They are the cup finalists, and Paul Maurice and Matthew Tkachuk. I mean, he's a must-see player in the NHL now. So it's not like you had Columbus as the opener, and it's like, okay, you hand wave it away. Like, they've had some pretty good matchups so far. So certainly it's concerning, and not to go down this road too much, but like the NHL's listening on expansion. They're obviously going to keep an eye on Arizona and where to potentially move them for relocation. It's really kind of an interesting time as far as where the NHL's head's at, as far as maybe adding more teams, or just, moving teams around. I'm not trying to say Winnipeg's going anywhere. I don't think they are, but it's just them
adding more
really
teams
throws another log on the fire.
It's just greed. The idea that there needs to be a 33rd or 34th team in the NHL where half these teams half these teams have rosters that are atrociously bad, in the depths of it. It's nothing but greed. I mean, it's just so that the owners can reap $800 million in an expansion fee or whatever the price is going to be.
If you have 34 teams, guys, I mean, there's going to be some watered down teams.
What happens?
Yeah, that's 50 players from another league right now, AHL, KHL, whatever. Right.
So
being injected like that waters down the product significantly, and I think it would be short-sighted if they decided within the next 5 years to go from 32 to 34.
But
I
they're going
understand.
to.
It'll probably be $1 billion, Ezra, by the time they get around to it. $1 billion in the owner's pocket around the league.
Yeah.
To welcome a new franchise. Let's say, and this is all hypothetical, but let's say they bring 2 in. That's $2 billion, and the players don't get a cent of that because it's not included in hockey-related revenue. So you can certainly talk yourself into being in the shoes of NHL head office or an NHL owner and going, I'd love 34 teams. But as far as the long-term view, I think it's already a watered-down league. And Drew, got your name right.
Thank you.
The 82 game schedule, I think if you were to recalibrate the league, like start fresh, no sort of incentives on any side, I think 70, maybe somewhere in the 50s would it be an appropriate amount of games just to sort of spice up every matchup, because 82 is a slog. We all love the playoffs, and we think, obviously you could tweak it, but like that's really where they got it right. So to have such a long, torturous few months to get there, in some of these markets, like for example San Jose, you can understand the apathy in the fan base.
Completely. And I mean, it's these solutions are staring the NHL in the face if they really were interested in solutions and I don't believe that they are. They're interested in just milking everything for every last dollar. And and so be it. That's their prerogative as the owners. And then that's the prerogative of the fan base to either support or not support. That's the flip side to the whole equation. And, it'll either recalibrate itself or it won't, or, so be it, whatever it ends up being. John Mattis of The Score is our guest here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. John, which team from your perspective, I know it's very early, so it's, the panic button is still, got some dust on it, but if you were, if you're looking around the league, which team, is sort of screaming out that, hey, there's a bit of a situation here and we're not sure if it's going to, how easily it's going to resolve itself?
I think my mind immediately goes to Tampa Bay. As far as I was already really unsure about Jonas Johansson as their backup heading into the season with Vasilevsky as the starter. Like, I thought that him as a backup was a huge question mark. Them sort of going into a really important season with someone who had very little experience and limited upside. And then Vasilevsky gets hurt. He's going to be out for 2 months. And all of a sudden, Matt Tompkins of the Canadian Olympic team is the other guy in the crease. And I just think, like, I totally get how they ended up in this situation. I mean, this is a team that has suffered the most during this flat cap era as far as losing depth pieces. But that's really shown the goaltending. And if you look at their roster, their lineup, man, does it tail off after the first, say, 5 forwards. It drops down significantly after the first 3 defensemen. It drops down significantly. And I just think if you go through 3 or 4 summers of losing depth, like, it's going to catch up to you at some point. So although I believe in the top end of the roster, and I'm by no means shooing them away after whatever 4 or 5 games, especially a team with such pedigree, I'm quite concerned about how the season is going to go for Tampa Bay. I mean, if you look at their bottom pair, if you look at their fourth line, and you compare it to even like a middling team in the league, you're going to take that middling team's bottom pair and fourth line. That's how bad it's gotten. So I think Tampa jumps off the page. I mean, I'm a little concerned about Edmonton as far as the results so far, especially, we talk about the Jets and the high level of competition they've had. Edmonton's kind of been on the other end of it and had some pretty difficult losses, but I'm not worried about them overall because of 97 and 29. So yeah.
So John, I apologize to everybody for this next question, but I've been a Devils fan for 20 plus years, and there's been some lean years as a Devils fan, but not so much anymore. I think you know who I'm going to ask you about here. Jack Hughes. He leads the NHL in points right now. Not sure how many people saw his overtime goal yesterday. He had 4 points against the New York Islanders. And obviously he had one of the more quiet 99-point seasons last year with Connor McDavid putting up 153. But I think it needs to be talked about that, Jack Hughes might be, in that 120 to 130 point range this year. I mean, And again, I am a biased Devils fan here, but I mean, just how impressive has his play been so far this year? Maybe none of us should be surprised based on what I said, earlier, that he put up 99 points last year for the Devils.
Yeah, he's steadily progressed here, right, over his career, as far as the underwhelming rookie season, needed to bulk up, did so. And I think he's really added a shooting element to his game over the last couple of years, and that's really shone through. And I'm quite high on the Devils. I think that they have a tremendous amount of firepower. Meyer.
Thank you for joining me, by the way, John. There's a lot of room on this bandwagon.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the bandwagon. And Hughes is the driver there, right? And I think it can't be discounted that having Nico Hischier as the number 2 center, or whatever, 1B center, allows him to be, cheat a little bit, allows him to be Mr. Offense, whereas on some teams, your number 1 center needs to, just pay a little more attention to what's going on off the puck. But like, Hughes always had that tremendous skating, right? I mean, like, if we're talking on the planet right now, he's what, a top 5 skater, top 10 at worst. And he's got confidence for days, whether it's off the ice or how he acts on the ice. And I think that 120 points is certainly attainable. I think that he's probably going to win an Art Ross at some point, just based on, maybe McDavid has a down year, gets injured, whatever. I think he is part of that select few that can challenge McDavid on at some point in his career. And I think that, having some playoff success, or I should say playoff experience last year, limited success, is another, feather in his cap as far as moving the ball forward and being the guy in New Jersey. And here's one for you guys. Like, so coming into the season, McDavid, Cale Makar, Nathan McKinnon, Leon Draisaitl, Austin Matthews. I think that's fair to say that's the top 5 players in the world consensus. Like, you can quibble with the order.
Sounds right to me. Yeah.
I think Matthew Tkachuk and Jack Hughes have the ability to, by the end of this season, show us that it's actually a top 7, and that, maybe McDavid will be number 1, but from 2 to 7, you could argue all day until you're red in the face as to who's 2, who's 3, who's 4. I think that Hughes and Tkachuk are just, their trajectories are they're sort of the way that the arrow's pointing for them is going to bring them into that group.
It's a good problem to have for anybody who for any team that has any of those players you just mentioned. That's for certain. John Mattis is the national hockey writer for thescore.com. We remind everyone, check out his recent article about Drew Doughty, a great long read if you're looking for something to do this weekend, awaiting the start of the Jets and the Oilers later on tonight. John, always a pleasure to get together. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, and we'll keep working on the commercials to make sure that we keep entertaining you next time you come back.
I actually don't think you don't have to work on them at all. I think you just roll them out for eternity here.
I'm just saying, continue to improve on them is what I meant. Continue to fine tune them just a little bit, like that.
Well, no notes for me. Keep it up, guys. Love the show, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, John.
Cheers,
Be well,
John.
buddy.
Thank you.
We'll talk again real soon. There he goes, John Mattis from The Score, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Check out that Drew Doughty article. I promise you're going to enjoy that. Whether or not you're a huge fan like I am, it's a great read. John's in addition to being a great guy, he's a great writer. So I would recommend checking that out.
Agreed wholeheartedly. Reminder to everyone, late night tonight, Legal Curve After Dark, probably somewhere around 11:45, 11:50 in that vicinity.
You just have a sleepover tonight, Drew, because it's going to be so late. Like, I can just, maybe you can set up a cot in your basement or something.
Yeah, as per the court order, you are still not allowed on my property, and that's not going to change.
Well, especially with this virus, I don't think Laura's going to appreciate that. Well, the funniest thing is too, Drew, what was it on Wednesday when I told you I wasn't going to be doing the post-game show, and Drew was basically shielding his children because people who don't know, Drew and I are responsible for pickups at our children's school, whereas our beautiful and talented wives do the drop-offs. I believe Laura does the drop-off, right? Sometimes
she
the pickup.
does. Yeah.
So Drew was shielding his children from me and my virus.
But I shield my children from you on a regular basis, regardless
Sure.
of your health status. So it had nothing to
Sure.
do with your cold. It just had to do with good parenting and avoiding the creepy guy in the corner, as per
Sam
usual.
did give me a high five on Wednesday, though.
Yes, he was disciplined accordingly by at home, and we cut off his hand as a result, just to make sure we didn't want anything spreading.
Well,
But
I got to give you
nonetheless,
credit. Your kids they're good-looking kids. They're well-behaved kids, and I believe my kids were like banging on your car. Like my kids are crazy.
What
Like,
I want to
Drew's
know,
kids
Eddie,
are really well-behaved. My kids are just like loud, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I love them, but they are
your
they're
kids
animals.
are energetic and rambunctious like
Yeah,
they
they're
should
like-
be.
they're like me,
But what
let's be
I
honest.
want to know, Ezzy, is I put my kids. My kids went into the car and we got in the car, and then I saw you and your children walking far past your car. Where were you going?
Okay, that's a good question. So we live about, I don't know, I guess you'd call it about a block and a half. We're
Yeah.
very close. We're like a 5-minute walk from the school. Brock Warden
Yeah.
School is where our kids go. And there's a dog at the corner of the street, like the next block, and it's little dog named Ellie. It's a little puppy, and my kids absolutely love it. So now, like, the owner of the dog literally will come out every day around 4:35, 4:40. So that's where we were going. The kids
Oh,
love
okay.
to see Ellie the dog.
I honestly thought that you may have forgotten that you drove to the school and instead we're just walking home because
Possible.
it's so close. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I'm like, where is he going? He's walking right past his car.
The
Didn't
reason
even
I
look at
drove
it.
is because we were picking up pizza. Usually, like most of the time, I walk. I mean, let's be
Yes.
honest. I have no reason not to walk 2 blocks. I mean, I could
No.
lose some of my 240 pounds. It's not really going that well so far because I keep eating all those Viva Puffs and pumpkin pie. But yeah, so that's really what we're talking about here.
Well, if you enjoyed this debacle of a show, just wait till tonight's post-game show when Ezzy and I get back together a little bit later, closer to midnight tonight. Dave M getting a well-deserved night off tonight. The Jets and the
Enjoy
Oilers.
the bat mitzvah, Dave.
Yes, the Jets and the Oilers.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minute Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Wow.
I'm sorry. I gotta listen to you guys blather about school, this, that. The folks, the people want to hear the Minute Moose Minute. No, actually, the reason I did that is because before the Jets game, if you want a little appetizer,
Yeah.
the Moose are playing their rematch with the Wild. And if you want to be in the IC zone, send me an email, dave@illegalcurve.com. We've got some free tickets for you so you can go see tonight's Moose game. I'm not going to go too far into it. Yesterday, the Moose were in cruise control, had a sloppy second period, too many penalties. Kyle Capobianco scored his first. Brad Lambert scored his third goal in 3 games. Parker
Nice
Ford
shot by Lambert, Dave.
It was a real nice shot by Lambert. Parker Ford came out in a 55 jersey, even though he wears 25 to start the second period. Turned out he had gotten blood on his jersey and they were still cleaning it, and they didn't get a chance to get it done before the period started.
Did it say Shifley on the back, or did it say
It did
Ford
not.
on
It
the
actually
back?
had no name bar on the back. I've never seen anything like
That's
it before in my entire life, and so that was pretty funny. He said it was either that or a practice jersey. So we've got that video if you want to check it out on illegalcurve.com in the notes. And then quickly, I should mention, because let's get it out there, Thomas Milic, the 23 fifth rounder, made his pro debut yesterday for the Norfolk Admirals in the CHL. He lost in a shootout, but he had a .913, I think, save percentage. Rutger McGorty, goal and assist for Michigan in their 7-1 win. He's currently leading the NCAA in scoring. Jacob Julian, the 5th rounder from 2023, the other 5th rounder, he had a nice goal for London. And Colby Barlow, he scored his 6th goal in 6 games for Owen Sound, the 2023 first rounder for Winnipeg. He is scoring some goals for his club. So lots going on. And if you want,
Did you just read your tweets from last night? We could just say go to at IC Dave, because you tweeted all that out last night.
I know,
And
but I
showed the
mean,
videos.
I'm not suggesting that everybody follows me on Twitter. I mean, I hope you do. I hope you follow all of us on Twitter. But if you don't, then this is supposed to be a show about information, Ezzy, and I'm providing information to people who may not be aware of
It's
Twitter. Twitter
infotainment.
isn't everything. So I'm trying to provide a little.
Infotainment, a combination of information and nonsense that you can only find with us here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. So thank you to Dave M for that update. If you want to go to the Moose game, send him an email, dave@illegalcurve.com. And while you're at it, follow him at IC Dave on Twitter, at ICSEG, and yours truly at IC Drew. Yes, if you don't like to call it Twitter as per Matthew Thompson, you can call it X or whatever the hell you want to call it. It doesn't matter to us. Nonetheless, tonight, Jets and the Edmonton Oilers. So post-game later on tonight, keep it locked to illegalcurve.com all day long. Morning skate for the Jets coming up in about a couple hours time. So you can stay tuned for all the latest news on that on illegalcurve.com and of course on our social media at Illegal Curve. Big thanks to Jeff Hamilton. Big thanks to John Mattis. Big thanks to all of you for joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, leave us feedback here, there, and everywhere. We'll always like to know what you think about this show. And a big thank you to all of our sponsors who make this show, the post-game show, the website a possibility, our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, Rolly's Transfer, and the Rink Guys. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. Until about 12 hours and 45 minutes from now, we hope you have a great rest of your Saturday. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mandel. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow at Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.